Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next round of Contemporary Affairs Direct Instruction. I'm going to keep it pretty short and sweet on my end this week just because there's another video I want you to watch and some readings I want you to do. All of that is below this video on the next link section in Google Classroom. First, remember, you're going to watch this video. Then you're going to sign your name in the comment box below the video. Just sign your name so I know that you watched the video and saw it. And then you can get to work on the other video and worksheets. And then I have the code for the Google Meet session, the link to that on this post as well. You can go, I'll be there live, and you can ask me questions about the content, past, present, your grades, graduation, anything else you want, okay? So I'm going to jump right into it here. We are going to move into a new topic today. Obviously, coronavirus is still taking over our lives and is having a major impact. One of the positives I know is that it is tending to bring people closer together. People are going out of their way to help one another. First responders, nurses, grocery store workers, essential workers, fast food workers. People are finally getting some credit for the hard work they do. That is a positive that came out of this. Unfortunately, there are a lot of negatives in the world, and they haven't gone away just because the rest of the world kind of shut down because of this illness, this disease. So we're going to spend the last few weeks in May talking about some of those major issues we didn't get a chance to talk about in class. And the first major issue is a two-parter that we're going to start with part one this week, and it has to deal with modern-day slavery. Believe it or not, slavery still exists in the world, and even though it doesn't take the form that we're familiar with in our own U.S. history with the chattel slavery, where slaves, human beings, were viewed as property and bought and sold and treated horribly, like they were in this country for a couple hundred years. There are different forms of slavery, though, around the world, and we're going to hit on those. If you think back to when we were in class, you read an article on sweatshops, the very, very, very small amount of wages, the very harsh working conditions, people feeling like they can't leave. All of those fall under the context of slavery. And so sweatshops are a form of modern day slavery. You don't have to be physically confined to be a slave. You can be tricked into believing you can't leave a situation, and you are still a slave to that situation. The first major aspects of modern day slavery that I want to hit on today has to do with child soldiers. Child soldiers are being used all around the world to fight wars for corrupt governments, drug lords, cartels, a lot of different reasons. And it is a major issue, and it actually happens more than you'd think. Lot of people think of Africa when they think of child soldiers because that's predominantly where a lot of it happens, but there's still child soldiers being used throughout the world in Latin America, Europe, Southwest Asia, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, just lots of places. It's a really sad scenario. You're going to watch a TED Talk on a survivor from being a child soldier, and then you're going to read a couple articles and fill out some questions. But I do have a first-hand account that was passed on to me of what it was like being a child soldier. When I spent time out in Colorado working at a resort, they had an international exchange program, and so I got to meet people from all over the world and work with people from different countries. Brazil, France, Moldova, Argentina, Poland, and several countries in Africa. And one young man I remember working with told us probably one of the saddest stories ever. He belonged to a group called the Lost Boys of Sudan, who you're going to read about. And the Lost Boys of Sudan was a group of thousands of young boys and young men who marched about, I believe it was 20,000 miles in total to escape their war-torn country of Sudan in the late 90s and find freedom and find peace. And this young man was one of the Lost Boys of Sudan, and in his story he recounts how he and his little brother were forced to watch their parents get killed at the hands of a local warlord. Came into the village, killed all the adults in front of their children, and then forced the children to join their army at gunpoint. At that point, this young man was brought up and trained as a soldier. He was 8 years old at the time. And then he went into other villages and did the same thing. and killed kids' parents in front of them and recruited them to the army for a time. And he hated it, but it was what he had to do to keep him and his little brother alive. And it was a really sad story, but he eventually fled, escaped, joined the Lost Boys of Sudan, who eventually found refuge and were scattered around the world. He came to the United States via Chicago and then eventually ended in Colorado. One of the nicest guys I ever met, had a really sad story, but that kind of thing happens all over the world. So you're going to watch a video on another guy who escaped child slavery and read a couple articles. And then next week, we're going to look at another form of slavery in the form of human trafficking. So if you have any questions, hook up with me in the Google Meet. The link's below and the password is below. And then good luck with everything. We will see you next week.